The Florida Panthers players played well in the first games of the men's Olympic hockey tournament, but in the first game, it looked just like a Cats game.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in to this Thursday, February 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And shout out to every day to come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers and Olympic fix. So, Panther fans, Olympic fans, hockey fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers and in these next 2 weeks, Olympic hockey, as we are going to continue this coverage from that is going on in Milano Cortina. And great that this tournament has finally gotten kicked off with 2 games that we had on Wednesday. The first one being between Slovakia and Finland, where Slovakia won by a final score of 4-1. And then in the second leg of day one, where Sweden got a win by a final score of 5-2 over Italy. So the Florida Panthers, 4 players were represented they represented the Panthers, 3 from Finland, 1 on Sweden. And we're going to discuss segment number 1, the takeaways from the Finland-Slovakia game. And then in segment 2, we're going to discuss the takeaways from Italy-Sweden. And then we're going to prep you guys for Thursday's game, as it is going to be a marathon of a day starting at 6:10 a.m. And yeah, I'm recording this just after 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's not going to be a lot of sleep for yours truly here. And I'm once again very excited. And, I'm going to be energetic. I'm going to have my colada definitely ready for tomorrow. So definitely very excited to just get it started, and especially for the United States and Canada to get on the ice. But let's go over this game between Slovakia and Finland first. And yeah, a lot of domination of play. We saw that basically in both games between for these groups for both Finland and Sweden, as they controlled the play. We saw in this one, like we've seen in multiple Florida Panthers games, how the absence of Alexander Barkov is definitely noticeable based on the fact that the driving of the play, the give and goes, and then also the ability to deny entries for the other team is very noticeable. And then you have to ask a lot more from the guys like Mikko Rantanen, Sebastian Aho to drive play. And Roope Hintz is not necessarily a guy who can drive as far as getting the zone as well as Barkov, but he does actually I believe that Roope Hintz actually can produce more points than Barkov in most years. But as far as keeping the pucks out of your net, as far as that's the problem that really has been that was a struggle for Team Finland on Wednesday. And a poor turnover to start, where Jaroslav Koski of the Montreal Canadiens got a clear lane to the net, and then a miscommunication between the 2 defenders. The one Finnish player who's not in the NHL, Mikko Lehtinen, he was the one who got the turnover going from the corner, and then the drive, and then Yoki Haru doesn't pick him up, and then UC Saros is there all alone on him, and then he scores easily on that open net. And then Finland's power play was struggling and haven't not really connecting well in the first period, and then really started to get it going really later on. And then it was their second power play unit that was able to get in on the scoring, but it was not statistically a power play goal, but a nice little setup from Joel Armia on the goal to Eli Tolvanen to get it to 1-1. And really, we saw a message being sent from head coach Antti Pennanen in this game, where he really started to really trust the Lundell line a lot more, even though they didn't necessarily get really any shots on net. Both him and Eetu Luostarinen did not get any shots on net, but they were really winning a lot of their key draws and really getting out of the zone, and then also playing those key penalty kill minutes as they do, and we see with them in a Florida Panthers sweater. So that's also another thing that they just bring so much versatility. And then, I know that Anton Lundell gets a lot of gets overshadowed by Barkov, but we really see that this guy is just prepared on really any stage that he's put on. We've seen him in multiple Stanley Cup playoffs. Doesn't know what it's like to not make the playoffs. Even Four Nations last year, he held his own as well, and then doing it here. And I mean, at the end of the day, getting more minutes than most of the superstars that Finland has. And I mean, they got plenty of shots on goal, like the Mikko Rantanens and the Sebastian Ahos, but I mean, they were both minuses. Both of them were exactly a -2 in this game for both of them. Rantanen got 3, Sebastian 3 shots, Aho got 1, Miro Heiskanen getting his shots from the blue line, but again, very perimeter based that Team Finland was doing there. And also, we've also given crap to Sebastian Aho during his time in the Stanley Cup playoffs, 2 times facing up against the Florida Panthers, where he would just get bullied off the puck. And we saw him get bullied by Dalibor Dvorsky for the second goal that gave Slovakia the lead to make it 2-1. And we've seen that so many times over and over again. The Panthers exposed him, and they exposed Andrei Svechnikov as well, who Svechnikov is not playing in these Olympic Games. But still, that we've seen that trend too many times with someone like Aho there, like when the lights got brighter there. And I mean, not all the goals were UC Saros' fault. And I mean, you felt that he was not challenging the shooters as much as he should have. The first goal you really can't do really anything about. But I mean, you got to have find a way to produce more offense there. And also, there was a point in this game where I felt like it was a big turning point. And also, I want to give credit to Samuel Halava. He's a goaltender in the Wild system, currently playing in AHL Iowa. Right now, his numbers aren't necessarily the best as far as stats, but Jesper Wallstedt's stats were not the best as well, coming off of his AHL stint in Iowa just the year before. But one turning point, it was right before the game went to 2-1, for Slovakia, is that Miro Heiskanen had a backdoor feed to Rope Hintz, and Halava just got the leg out there for that opportunity, and that could have really changed the momentum of the game for Team Finland to make it 2-1. Instead, just a few minutes later, a face-off win, that was where Dvorsky got that goal, and then the game just changes right then and there. And also the physicality in this one, oh my goodness, the I know you can't fight in a tournament like this, but this was a tournament where they played each other like they were rivals. It's so fun because guys like Oliver Coulier and Nico Mikkola, which the Panthers have Coullier's rights still, even though he's unsigned. But Nico Mikkola, multiple time Stanley Cup champion, and also got 2 shots on goal. He wasn't a minus neither for the Finns. Etu wasn't a minus. Lundell wasn't a minus. Mikkola wasn't a minus. And also we saw multiple times about how Nico Mikkola was activating into play and driving a lot of the offense as well. So also that is a little bit of positive for Team Finland. So we saw Mikkola and Oliver Coulier pushing and shoving quite a bit during that second period. And also we saw it towards the end of the period, right before those 2 went into intermission as well. But again, it was a 2-2 hockey game, 1-1, going into the third period, and that could have you had the chances there because there were 30. It was 32-15 as far as shots coming out of the second intermission, which crazy to think, like we mentioned in the preview, 15-minute intermissions compared to 18, and so it was like fast as well. The commercial breaks were a lot shorter. So it was just getting quick, and you're not there. Although we are watching a marathon of games here, these games are going by in just over the 2-hour mark, and I love it as far as the pace and just getting back to the games here for Olympic hockey, which again we have so many gaps with these Olympic hockey games. But man, has Yaroslav Slavkovsky, he not only scoring the first goal, but the second, but the third goal on the power play, just going bar down and giving them a 2-goal lead there for Slovakia, and then that crazy empty net goal, which we need more live camera angles from the actual net, because NBC changed the camera angle right before Ruzicka scored there, which crazy to think Rantanen got a block there after Slavkovsky broke his stick, and Thomas Tatar got that shot off Rantanen, and then Slovakia was able to score. But crazy when it comes to the Sammy Halava, with him, athletic, and for his size as well. I believe he's 6'6" there. And it also begs the question of, if this play continues and the profile that he's actually, through one game is starting to create, and if this continues later on in the Olympics, this might make Bill Guerin's job a little easier to try to trade someone like Jesper Wallstedt. And the phones are going to be ringing for him this summer. And with the Panthers having a little bit of trouble in net, maybe that would give Bill Guerin a little bit of confidence that Halava can at least get promoted to the NHL and be the number 2 behind Philip Gustafsson, and then Jesper Wallstedt goes somewhere else, which the Panthers should be one of those teams who should be calling the Minnesota Wild this summer for what the offer could be. And yeah, that top 10 pick that the Panthers could have as a top 10 protected pick, maybe that could be on the table. Although I do believe that the Panthers will more than likely keep the pick than they are to trade it, at least not immediately. But still, you make that call no matter what there, just to see what Bill Guerin's thinking. But hey, the world now knows Sammy Halava's name after that performance. And it's crazy. We've seen goaltending performances from Yaroslav Halak there for Slovakia in the Olympics before, and then that great playoff series that he had when he was with the Montreal Canadiens against the Washington Capitals there. So we've seen outstanding Slovakian performances. I mean, we've seen it from also defenseman Zdeno Chara. So a lot of talent has definitely come, and so far so good right now for Slovakia, even though it does come in upset fashion against Finland. But we're going to transition to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss the Sweden-Italy game, where Gustav Forsling, man, did he have a performance for that game for Sweden's win. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo. And new year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communication is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. When your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. It works right with your phone from computer, so you can even keep your existing number. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps so details never slip through the cracks. Make this year the year with no opportunities, no customers slip away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off of the first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonNHL. That's quo.com/lockedonNHL. Quo, no missed calls, no miss customers. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday. So now continuing this discussion and discussing and breaking down the Sweden's 5-2 victory over Italy. And it came with a little bit of a scare. And crazy to think that with Sweden putting up 60 plus shots in this game. I mean, there were times where you felt a little frustrated. I mean, I'm mostly saying this as a hockey fan, not a Sweden fan. here. But I mean, controlling over 75% of the shot on goal share in this one, and just the inability to finish in this one a lot of the time. And then there was a few players that I just found myself frustrated in. I mean, Elias Pettersson, especially in this one, where there was one opportunity where he had a full step to at least go for a wraparound opportunity, and then he doesn't even get a shot on. And then one of the shorthanded breakaways that he had, which actually got the goaltender for Italy injured on that one, Darian Clara, there, who's the only player who they're drafted by an NHL team of the Anaheim Ducks. There, that you saw in that game where it's like, man, so many opportunities to finish, and he just didn't there. And William Nylander, he was listed as the 13th forward to begin, mostly because he's been facing an injury, and he had a little bit of a struggle coming back, played in a few games for the Maple Leafs right before they went over to Milan, and you could clearly see that he's still kind of struggling out there. And I'm surprised they even put him there to begin with. But at the same time, if you're the coach, Sam Hallam, here in this situation, you can't take any team lightly. And you see that when Italy is having this game and scoring within the first minute of this game, you could see why you need to put someone like William Nylander up there in this game, where it's great. It's listed. It's discussed possibly as a groin injury. Remember, in NHL, you don't necessarily know all the details, but with Nylander's injury, there was one feed where he was just fed from the back door and just flat out missed the net. And then there was another one where he had a clear lane to the net, and then Damian Clara had the leg out, and he couldn't lift the puck a little bit higher there. And I'm just thinking, man, he's doing his absolute best out there. So got a feel for him, and just playing through the injury. I mean, we discussed that most of the time with Florida Panthers players coming out there and just trying to play through stuff. But Damian Clara was outstanding right before he was replaced due to the injury there. And you feel for Italy, obviously them being the host nation and getting this opportunity to be in the Olympics. But man, did Sweden really tilt the ice in their direction. 10 players with 4 shots on goal. Joel Eriksson Ek had 9 of them. My goodness, we know him as a great defensive center, but man, he could really produce a lot of offense there. And I mean, the fact that he's going to go back to Minnesota, hopefully healthy, and the fact that they are really set up with him really nicely for a long playoff run there. But there's a lot of opportunities there, as Sweden compared to Finland is a more run and gun type of team. But the great thing about Sweden in this game, especially if you look at the shifts and the average time of the shifts there, nobody was over 50 and nobody was over 30. So this was actually great coaching by Sam Hallam here in game number 1. And obviously, when you break this game open a little bit later on, that really is truly helpful there. I mean, yeah, it didn't really happen until the third period when Will Nylander got that goal on the backhand attempt after Rasmus Dahlin had the drive there to the net. But still, you found a way to at least win a little comfortably there. And also the fact that Mika Zibanejad there, he would have definitely beat himself up if he didn't score in that shift, because right before he did score, he had a big miss of net. So it would have been, I know he would have been beating himself up had he not scored on that shift to make it 4-2 and get a little bit of insurance. But yeah, Gustav Forsling, my goodness, outstanding. A goal, the second one of the game to make it 2-1 off of a bouncing puck. He got the puck deep, and then right when they were trying a centering feed, the puck bounced, and it was just like a slow roll grounder up the third base line, and then you're barehanding it and throwing it to first base. Gustav Forsling had that kind of mindset where he saw a bouncing puck starting to bounce a little bit towards the slot, towards the left circle, and then charging, and then a slap shot right through the short side. And that shot had to have been 90 miles an hour. And then also what Gustav Forsling was doing, turning defense into offense, getting pinching responsibly and also getting some of those backdoor fees as well. He was playing mostly with Rasmus Dahlin in this game and not putting his team in a poor position there. And credit to Gustav Forsling playing on the biggest of stages. He went through 2 straight Stanley Cup finals, playing against the lines like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl there. So a lot of credit goes to him on just what he's on playing on the biggest of stages. And I'll repeat this like I said this time last year, where Gustav Forsling did not have the best Four Nations tournament. And I'm sure that kind of stuck with him. I mean, we're so used to playing him playing well when the lights are brightest, but that in that specific 3-game span that those Team Sweden played, we didn't really see the best out of Gustav Forsling. And I mean, if you want to count that last game last year at that point last year, because let's not forget, Sweden was eliminated before that final game of the tournament. Because theirs was the primetime game. The Canada-Finland game was during the day. So they found out what their fate was before they even took the ice against the United States. And that game didn't mean anything because the U.S. already advanced to the Four Nations final there. But you know what? They kept pursuing. They found a way to get some insurance later. Off that goal from Zibanejad, and then Gustav Forsling got an assist on Victor Hedman's goal, a nice defensive zone draw, and then shooting it across the ice. And the broadcast even said it, if this were a lot closer game, you probably don't see Victor Hedman shooting that from across the ice, and instead they're probably skating it out. But you could take a lot more of those risks when you are up by multiple goals there, and putting it away. And also got to give credit to Italy for at least giving it the effort, even though they don't stack up to the team that Sweden is. So going to be interesting between Finland and Sweden what happens next, because they're going to face each other on Friday early in the morning here in the US, but it's going to be middle of the day in Sweden and Finland, as those two are big rivals, just like US and Canada. And Slovakia takes on Italy. So you're going to have I love that when the second game of the Olympics is going on, that there's a 1-0 team and an 0-1 team, because your tournament can be over just like that. And the pressure is really on. The pressure is truly on Finland. So I'm really excited to see how that game turns out on Friday, because Finland was the victorious one last year against Sweden there. So we will see how that goes for that. But we're going to transition to segment number 3, where we are going to preview Thursday's games of the Olympic Games for the men's tournament. We'll discuss that next here at the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And the Winter Games are officially here. And if you're anything like us, you're locking into the events that you could only see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Olympic Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about the most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama from curling matches start slow and somehow get intense fast. Speed skating races decided by inches. Hockey games that feel different right from the opening faceoff. Every niche becomes the must-watch when you're fully locked in to the competition. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Olympic Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Third and final segment here on this Thursday, February 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So let's discuss more about and preview some of these games on Thursday, starting at 6:10 a.m. all the way until 3:10, which there'll be 2 games going on simultaneously at 3:10, which Latvia going up against the United States. Sandis Vilmanis versus Charlie McAvoy after what happened just last week there with that elbow to the head there. But USA, man, I'm very excited to see how they perform. I'm excited for the Kachuk brothers to be together. I'm excited to see all the possibilities of crushing certain narratives, which Jack Hughes is getting a lot of heat. Kyle Connor didn't really get a chance last year due to Kachuk being Matthew Kachuk. I'm saying playing in the Four Nations final, even though he was hurt. How does Dylan Larkin continue his play from last year, as he was an outstanding part of that USA team? Quinn Hughes not playing last year and playing in this one. And then, although neither Switzerland or France are favorites by any stretch in the tournament, which the two NHLers that I recognize the most are Alex Texier, who plays with the Montreal Canadiens, and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, who I remember him from a few years ago with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But how do those teams set a tone early on? And you want to get a good feeling being 1-0 in the tournament, no matter what. There. And also there's a women's hockey game as well. It was a rescheduling of a game from the prelims for the women's side of things. Finland and Canada are actually going to be also playing at 8:30 there. No Marie-Philippe Poulin in that game. So that's the final game right before the knockout stage for the women's tournament. So you'll get a little bit of hockey in between the Switzerland-France game and also Czechia-Canada for the men's side. And also, something I found out earlier today is that the Canadian national team for Hockey Canada, they're no longer staying in the Olympic Village. They actually decided to get a hotel outside of the village, which it's so crazy to see the quotes from guys like who are locked in, like a Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, who are, people might see them as tyrants, but I see it as actually a little bit admirable about how passionate they are about their craft and how much they just want to flat out win there. So I think it's awesome where Nathan McKinnon, who's won a Stanley Cup, he's not satisfied and he just wants to go out there and just play. Connor McDavid, I wouldn't say his reputation is on the line for whether, I know he's a Conn Smythe Trophy winner and he didn't win the Stanley Cup, and he was the best player throughout the entirety of the playoffs in 2024, setting records and then getting the winner for Four Nations last year. But there's still a lot of pressure on him to, at least because he didn't win at the junior hockey level in Erie when he was in the OHL. So if he's not going to win a Stanley Cup, he's got to have something on his resume at the pro level. So that's really a lot of hunger there for a guy like McDavid. And also, Canada has been hit and miss where it's come to whether practices have been closed to the media or open. So they've had a few of those where they're just trying not to tip their hand so that the opponents know who they're starting in net, which John Cooper was asked about it. And he's just saying he knows that it's going to be a storyline, that the biggest deal, but it's projected that Jordan Binnington is going to get the first game, which Canada is going to be on a back-to-back to start. So you're not going to start Binnington more than likely in both games. So at least give him the first. Logan Thompson gets the second, and then you decide from there on this where you're going to go in game number 3. So you have a little bit of runway, but the Czechs are no slouch. They're not one. They're going to get that challenge early. So that's the great thing about that, the fact that Canada can't even relax even the least bit here for their first Olympic tournament game. I know that Canada will be facing Switzerland in their second game, and by no means should Switzerland be the favorite there. But, at least if Jordan Binnington is able to get a win against the tougher opponent, which I would say is Czechia over Switzerland, that would stay in the mind of someone like John Cooper when it comes to how they proceed going forward, when it comes to when they get later on in the tournament, because you're going to have more than a few days off here for Canada. They won't take the ice again until Sunday, so they'll have a Saturday off, and then they'll be right there in their last game against France, which again, the first game is basically their biggest litmus test, in my opinion, on paper. And then I feel that they should be able to cruise through the next 2 games there. But never say never. I mean, Italy gave Sweden a challenge, and you never know what could happen in the Olympic Games for any of these tournaments there. So we will see what happens. And again, set your alarms if you are waking up early. And if you haven't set them and you're listening to this at work while having a tab open at your office, enjoy listening to this podcast as well while having that tab open and pretending like you're doing work. Just maybe have one on mute and then the other one play while this podcast is playing, and then minimize your tab when your bosses walk around towards your desk, if that's what you happen to do, or if you happen to be on the road. Take this with you, as we are going to be coming back here with and continuing the coverage here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast for the Winter Olympics. So multiple Florida Panthers are taking the ice on Thursday, none of them in the first game. So if you want to sleep in, you are more than welcome to. But starting in for the 10:40 game, that's when the Florida Panthers players will hit the ice there. So if that's what you only care about, and you care about the Florida Panthers only, then you'll get to at least stay in bed a little bit longer, unless you just have to wake up early, if that's what your profession brings to you. But thank you guys, as always, for listening and watching. We're going to be back here on Friday with Nick Fairbanks, as we are going to break down all these games from Thursday's action from the Olympics, and also preview Friday's set of games. Thank you guys, as always, for listening. And in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.